Hello everybody. This is Lorraine, Alternative Homesteading. I just wanted to show you some of the babies in the doghouse. They evidently appreciate a little bit of luxury and have found this doghouse, which is outside of my house. I have some insulation falling down here. And they're hanging out on a pillow, which I just cleaned, of course. But the purpose of this video is to read an article. And let me get it. I just finished harvesting some black elderberries from our tree. Here's Mikey, who's missing Jessie very much. Mikey, where's Jessie? Mikey's very upset. He's lonely. He misses his best friend. Was stolen right out from under him. And look, he's very sad. He's crying. I feel so bad, Mikey. Mikey. They're cruel, mean, Mikey. They're very, very mean to take your friend away from you. But I'm going to walk down here. We've got chickens all over the place. And these are the baby barred rocks right here that are growing tremendously. The little buffs. I've bought some buff Orpingtons and Red Star from Murray McMurray Hatchery. So we've got 6 of each of those. Hello, Popcorn. There's Popcorn. And I want to give a shout out to a gardening channel that I watch. I really like him a lot. His name is James Pigioni, and that's the name of his channel, gardening channel. And he's located in New Jersey. And he's got a little dog named Tuck, who's really adorable. And he's got some really cool videos. He lives in a house with a backyard in the suburbs in New Jersey, and he turned his entire backyard into a food forest. So if he can do it, you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. It's a little challenging when you're a targeted person because of the amount of sabotage, etc. But here we go. We're going to read an article that was written. Let me see if I can get a better location for you to be viewing while I'm reading this, because the sun is low now and the tree stump that I usually sit on is very, very sunny. I might sit here anyway. I'll roast up for a little bit. But anyway, this article was written by Karen Stewart. Karen Stewart is a retired NSA Intelligence Analyst. She worked there for 28 years. This article is called, "How is this surveillance?" quote unquote. It's listed in the Activist Post, June 6, 2021. So this op-ed is by Karen Stewart. And this is really important, folks, because, you know, I hear other YouTube creators talk about, oh, we're all under surveillance. And for the most part, we all are. We're under surveillance by our posts on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, who we watch, who we follow. When we click on a like, it's factored into their algorithms of what they can do to market to us. But what most people don't understand is what surveillance really means to a target. Somebody who's actually placed on a watch list to be tormented. And I think I'm going to sit in front of the nonprofit building because it is shady here and I'll be able to read this better. And then I'll get to be able to watch the chickens out of the corner of my eye, too. And that little dangling that you hear, I wear my keys around my neck with a multi-tool, a flashlight, and a knife, just in case. So here we go. It's nice and quiet and serene. Generally, the perpetrators, the neighbors that are co-opted in the harassment, they employ them for certain times of the year. It's usually like April, May, June, July, or March, April, May, June, July, and then it subsides. And then it starts up again. And then they get, the usual criminals that drive back and forth, and then just the boots on the ground criminals, the ones that break into my house and vandalize the property and steal animals. So this article is, how is this surveillance? So the FBI fusion centers claim that they are, quote, surveilling potential threats to the U.S. Homeland Security, so they need ever-increasing budgets and growth, but no accountability. Fusion centers throw people onto the watch list with no due process, no evidence or fact verification, no witness validation, only vague accusations equaling a wink and a nod from people who have power and influence, but also have an agenda. Every new person on the list is more money for the fusion centers and their business partners and civilian operatives, the mercenaries. The main fusion center is then tasked with fabricating a false dossier to make it appear that there may be a reason for concern. This is why people accused secretly cannot be told or allowed to challenge the fusion center lies. Excuse me. This fairy tale, called a, quote, suspicious activity report, unquote, SAR, is tailored to pass muster with the lax FISA court, FISA, which then rubber stamps their surveillance warrant request with less than a critical requirement for credibility. Civilian mercenaries are then engaged in a 24/7 surveillance that involves active, overt, and covert harassment, which can vary from amazingly petty to criminally vicious or even dangerously psychopathic. Dear authorities, please explain how the following activity is legal, quote-unquote, surveillance, which implies watching someone to see if their behavior warrants an actual law enforcement investigation in regard to crimes they may be committing. And in addition, how such, quote, surveillance, unquote, can be renewed and continued for years or even decades with no evidence at all of wrongdoing by a, quote, target, unquote, intrusively harassed and even provoked 24/7? Also, please explain how random, non-law enforcement civilians can break any law and wield covert weapons of war against innocent, unarmed non-combatants with supposed impunity to victimize, torture, kill, quote, the target, unquote, while getting paid under-the-table gift cards of laundered tax money when no criminal infraction by their victim can be identified? Surveillance activity? What is surveillance activity? I'm adding that. What is it? And Karen is highlighting it here. Surveillance activity is assigning rotating teams of civilians to overtly stalk and hinder the target 24/7 in everything he or she tries to do in everyday life. It rather alerts them to the surveillance, does it not? And here comes a perp driving down the block. Surrounding and blocking a quote-unquote target with multiple drivers to intimidate, interfere with free travel, arrange car accidents to injure or at least cause the target financial damage, devaluation of his property, and an increase in his insurance bill. Also, the need for body work is used to incorporate GPS devices into the body of the car forever, as well as sabotage, damage the car in other ways. Constant vandalism of the car, paint scratches, slit tires, slit upholstery, broken headlights, broken windows, rewiring the car to give off dirty electricity to harm the target's health, demanding keys from dealership to constantly access the interior of the car for mischief or worse, stealing good tires to replace with dangerously decayed, tampering with brakes, loosening wheels, etc., causing financial and health damage. And endangerment is surveillance, placing damaging or dangerous substances in the gas tank, etc. They did that to my mother's vehicle. After my mother was murdered with the COVID protocol, after she was intentionally given a seizure in her sleep, the criminals, this is just amazing that in my own grief, in trying to summarize and sum up my mother's financial affairs, deal with the grief of her loss, the mistreatment of her in a hospital, the murder of her prematurely, living in here in Kentucky when she was in New York, and then to have two criminals be seen pouring something into the gas tank of my mother's pristinely kept vehicle. And that's what they do. The Fusion Center mercenaries spread rumors among family, friends, neighbors, employers, the PTA, church groups, service groups, social groups, local retailers, the medical community, law enforcement, blue-collar workers, etc., that the target is a prostitute, a pedophile, has aberrant sexual appetites, is a wife-beater, a drug dealer, is dangerously mentally ill, a cross-dresser, a convicted felon, someone they just know is a horrible person or a criminal, but somehow just can't seem to find the minimum of evidence. Well, let me just interject here, folks. If someone has unusual sexual appetites and it is a consensual act, how is that a crime? I mean, I happen to know couples that engage in wife and husband swapping. Is that a crime? You may not agree with it. It may not be something that you approve of. But I don't believe that it's a crime. And no one should have permission to videotape anybody in the bedroom or in their house having sexual relationships with anyone. Even if that individual is, let's say, having an affair. Right? There are lots of people out there that have them, lots of politicians. I'm sure some of those FBI agents do too. Generally, when somebody is so obsessed with surveilling someone for these activities, it's a projection of what's going on in their own backyard. Someone they just know is a horrible person or a criminal, but somehow they just can't seem to find a minimum of evidence. There's constant harassment, injury, torture, theft, murder of pets to run up financial debt and inflict emotional devastation to the target. Example, A California woman reported the leg was cut off her gray parrot, necessitating her having to get him put down. Another targeted person found his dog hanged. Well, I'm going to interject that one of my cats had her eyes torn out of her head, and she was thrown outside in the rain on Christmas Day. And the perpetrators that did this must have been inebriated because they left empty bottles of booze around her limp, dead body. Some of those photos are on my Facebook page called Targeted Pets. And Facebook blocks it out and says that it is, I forget the term that they use for it, sensitive information. Proceed with caution. Criminals blinded my mother's cat. These criminals have an obsession with the eyes. These Illuminati Freemason losers, you know, the ones that wear aprons in secret. Folks, any man that's like running around in an apron, if he's not in a kitchen or by a barbecue, there is something wrong. That's just my personal opinion. It's not a fact. Pets are accessed in their homes as well as their yards. Part of the constant break-ins where locks are clearly no problem for the Fusion Center operatives. Dead animals are also put on the target's property to intimidate. It can be a wild animal or someone else's murdered pet. And I will add that, yes, I had a pregnant rabbit cut in half, placed in front of my house here in Kentucky. The umbilical cord was attached to the fetus. This was not done by an animal. This was done by a criminal. In New Jersey, the criminals put a dead fish on my driveway, a dead baby rat, a live hornet's nest on my porch, not my porch, in back of my house, on my patio. A live hornet's nest. It just got there all by itself. It must have blown there from like some perp's house. They also do things like, because a lot of Satanists are involved in stalking, they absolutely enjoy placing their witchcraft around the property. For instance, they'll place triangles, pieces of glass, string, rusted nails, rusted screws, crumbled dead leaves, hawthorn berries. They also like to plant creeping Charlie and creeping Jenny, any kind of creeping vine around your house to creep under the house. They also will plant it in your garden beds. They'll throw grass seed in your flower beds. And I'll show you one here. They threw grass in here. See that, folks? How did that get there? Home intrusions vary from the above pet harm to the theft of not only valuables, but to the theft or destruction of very personal and irreplaceable items such as family photos, awards, gifts, urns, paperwork, necessary documents, to wanton vandalism or theft of home decorations or furniture, slashing of clothing, theft of clothing or home items, sometimes returned but often not, the random rearrangement of home items merely to show that somebody was there. Especially concerning to pet owners who often find their pets have been terrorized, at least while the target was away. And I can attest to this. In 2015, 16, 17, and more, I would walk into my house And I have I have a cat rescue, and I have a lot of cats. And I would walk in and I would see zero, no cats. I would call to them, no cats. Usually I'd have 3 or 4 waiting by the door when I walk in, nothing. It was so highly unusual. And I would find 8 or 9 cats huddled together underneath a huge chair in my family room, an upholstered chair. Anytime they were missing, they would be there or under my bed. I'm in my bedroom. Targets with storage units also report constant pilfering of items from locked units as well. As I said, no lock keeps out these roaches, as the FBI fusion centers employ expert locksmiths. When a target replaces a door lock, locksmiths are told by fusion centers to make the fusion center a third key, especially if it is supposedly a pick-proof lock. They are alerted to this activity by intercepting phone calls and emails, and this was done to me. I changed my locks in Manalapan, New Jersey, 52 Sutton Drive, Northfield Estates, in a home I lived in for 30 years as the original owner. I had to change my locks 3 times, and I had allegedly pick-proof locks. But these criminals always had a key. In fact, I caught one of the criminals, a neighbor, who moved in diagonally across the street, an alleged law enforcement female person. I caught her 2:30 in the morning attempting to enter my home with a key. I heard click, 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 click. I was in my bedroom, and she couldn't get in because the door was barricaded. But she went back to her sorry little house across the street and triggered her motion sensor lights to let me know that it was her. But I digress. Of course, I have to, interject my own comments along the way. So there is constant hacking into computers, tablets, smartphones, erasure of mails, erasure of contact information, erasure of photographic or video proof of harassment, which is proof nullification, of personal photos, theft of, damage to, the destruction of such electronics, hacking into bank accounts for embezzlement purposes, wreaking havoc with the important records that are changed or disappear, service denial by blocking, jamming signals to hinder, cripple a target's ability to make appointments, speak to officials, call friends, call family, or even block their ability to call 911. And I will attest to this because when I speak to certain targeted people on the phone, we are constantly cut off. There's constant phone interference. I had been trying to contact my stepfather for more than a month, and he said he never received any of my phone calls, none of my voice messages. Could you imagine if there was a real emergency? I have made doctor appointments, and when I would call to confirm the next day, I was told that it had already been changed. Somebody called and changed my appointment. Of course, I would have missed my appointment because the criminal changed my appointment, and I would not have known that. Lawyers are even forbidden to take cases or are encouraged to take the money, then sabotage the efforts undertaken for the target, effectively leaving them without representation or legal recourse. Judges have also reportedly been instructed to defy legal precedent and rule against targets who are clearly the victims of others. Police have been ordered to purposely deny the target the ability to file a report, or are told to say the victim is the perpetrator and the perpetrator is the victim, and are given lists of targets to whom the police are not allowed to give equal protection to under the law. Medical personnel have been caught substituting other people's test results, such as X-rays, for the targets to mislead them into thinking there is damage when there is none, or vice versa, to keep them from getting appropriate care. Doctors have been pressured to write up a physical injury by normal means, or especially directed energy weapons, such obviously second and third degree whole body burns received overnight in the target's home, as, quote, delusional, unquote, to cover up felony assaults by fusion center operatives and further damage the target's credibility. And I can attest to the fact that I have been burned on my body. And I have photos of those burns, and it didn't happen naturally. It happened to me with some directed energy weapon or laser. Fusion center operatives have indeed driven targets to joblessness, homelessness, and even delight in sabotaging efforts by targets who may be relegated in living in their cars, to even get food delivery jobs by speaking with employers to blackball them. The number of people ruined and forced to starve, die of untreated disease or injury, wrongfully committed, wrongfully incarcerated, is inestimable at this point. Now add to the mix the number of mental facilities and prisons that the Department of Homeland Security related entities have invested interest in. And you will ask yourself if the DHS FBI fusion centers are not just hanging innocent people into servitude and bondage for cannibalizing its own, eating its own. This is not the federal government cannibalizing its own, eating its own. No charges are ever pressed against these targets because there is no evidence of crime on their part. The exception is if an act of self-defense is perjured by a paid false witness and or co-opted cops into an unprovoked assault, no doubt called a predictive pre-crime win. Friends or family offering the target refuge have often met with improbable disaster or even death, like my mother. Family members and even friends are injured by 24/7 directed energy attacks as well. The fusion centers simply do not care about collateral damage. Note, these crimes and more are done 24/7 to, quote, unquote, suspects, supposedly under, quote, surveillance, unquote. Surveillance is technically done covertly to see if any evidence exists to satisfy a legal criteria to open a real criminal investigation. But this perversion of surveillance is done as a ruse to war on an innocent person by hundreds of mercenaries assigned to each target, who have been given sophisticated weapons of war to use on innocent, unarmed, non-combatants. This is brazen criminal harassment and criminal provocation to try to punish people without proof of any crime, nor give them any ability to prove themselves innocent, in the apparent total disregard of a legal system founded on proving a person guilty before they are punished, and to provoke people into acting out in self-defense against the protected class of criminals, viciously ganging up on them 24/7 and causing immeasurable emotional stress and daily trauma, as well as ever-increasing financial damage and ruin. Weaponry is also strongest throughout the night to disrupt sleep and more quickly hasten the target's health destruction and death. I can attest to that. I am heated up every night. I woke up today with a headache. I didn't have a headache upon falling asleep. And the criminals also stole my EMF skull cap for the second time. The one I purchased from a less EMF. It's like over $60, and they stole it twice. And all the above thoroughly unprofessional, terroristic behavior by the U.S. government is, in addition to aiming a directed energy weapon such as microwave weapons at the target, often 24/7, to permanently damage their health, as well as torture and kill them even before any wrongdoing has ever been established at all. Again, I ask you, how is this surveillance? I would like for the folks listening to this to really digest what this means to you and me and everybody out there, your children, the future generations. And if you feel inclined, post a comment down below. What is your definition of surveillance? Is it torture? Is it directed energy weapons at your pets, your house, your physical body? Is it asset stripping, breaking and entering, theft, vandalism? Is that surveillance? Or is the surveillance the constant 24/7 surveillance to determine what part of an individual's life they can destroy that will have the greatest impact on that person? Because the only way to know a person really is to live with them. And if you've got somebody in your house watching through cameras, security cameras, satellite, drones, if you have somebody watching you 24/7, everything you do, everything you buy, whatever you eat, what you throw away in the garbage, when you wipe your butt, these criminals use that to devise their torture program against an innocent person. That is what their surveillance is about. Their surveillance is to observe every detail of your life, what you think, what you eat, who your friends are, your interests, how you think. Of course, that's their biggest threat. And they will hack that also. And in doing so, steal your intellectual property. They can literally steal your dreams, your thoughts. For the real targets out there that have remote neural monitoring and that kind of constant surveillance, they know what you're going to do before you do it because maybe you've thought about it. Maybe you're thinking in your mind about creating a business and what that business model will be and how you will approach it, because you are a very creative problem solver. In fact, you may be more creative and more problem solving and resourceful than a large portion of the population. That's what makes you successful. But these criminals want to know that so they can steal it from you. And they will, and they do. So everybody, this is Lorraine Alternative Homesteading. It's just a little bit after 7 o'clock here. And this, I've discovered, this is a rooster. Guess what I named my rooster? I wasn't sure. And he is one of the babies from April. And he's quite large. And I thought he was a rooster. I wasn't sure, but he started crowing. I've named him, ta-da, Rand Paul. So I've got Tucker Carlson and Rand Paul and Bandit are my roosters. I don't have names for all the new chickies yet, and certainly not the guinea hens. I've got those 7 there. I don't know if I can name them all, but I've got some ideas, and if you have some ideas to name some of my other chickies, leave some comments down below. Some cute names for chickies that maybe I don't have yet. And here's one little baby. There's always one that gets lost from the little group. There's a little group of 8. Where'd they go? What happened? Where are they? Where'd they go? Where'd they go? Where? Oh, these are the guineas. These are the baby guineas. That's them. Yeah, that's them. But where's your friends? Where'd the friends go? Let's go find them. Let's go. Let's go see where they are. Let's go see. Oh my goodness. My baby chicks escaped. I've got 3 little chickies there. They escaped. They're eating cat food. I have to run. This is Lorraine Alternative Homesteading signing off.